Last month, Congresswoman DeLauro and I, along with Senators Van Hollen and Durbin, led over 80 congressional Democrats to urge the Biden administration to impose financial sanctions on certain members of the Netanyahu government, specifically Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir for their role in the rise of settler violence, settlement expansion, and the general destabilization of the West Bank. I represent one of the largest Palestinian populations in the United States. I've had constituents who have lost loved ones, have had family land seized, and even as American citizens have been detained in Israeli prisons simply for the crime of visiting their families. I am also a staunch supporter of Israel and categorically support their right to defend themselves and recover hostages taken during the horrific acts of October 7th. And let us be very clear. There is no conflict between supporting the nation of Israel and the dignity of the Palestinian people, so long as you are committed to a permanent and durable regional peace in this lifetime. And that peace will never be realized until people on both sides of the Green Line have equal property rights, security, and opportunity. Now, that's not possible as long as Israeli hostages are being detained or as rockets continue to fly into Israel from Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. But it's also not possible as long as Palestinians in the West Bank are having their property confiscated, livestock killed, and their communities bulldozed. Violent settlers in the West Bank have carried out almost 1,300 known attacks against Palestinians since October 7th. At least 25 new outposts have been established. 70 illegal outposts were recognized and are eligible for funding by the Israeli government. All of these actions are illegal under international law. Earlier this year, President Biden issued Executive Order 14115 that authorized the imposition of sanctions on anyone determined to be, quote, responsible for, complicit in, or to have directly or indirectly engaged or attempted to engage in actions that threaten the peace, security, or stability of the West Bank. To date, President Biden has used this order to sanction Palestinian militant groups, organizations involved in violent extremist activity, instigators from the settler movement, and the outposts from which violent attacks are launched. But just as it is appropriate for Israel to target Hamas leadership in their response to October 7th, it is necessary for the United States to target financial sanctions on the leaders of the extremist settler movement. Which brings us to Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. They have distributed rifles to extremists. They have allowed those extremists to attack humanitarian aid convoys. They have prevented the Palestinian Authority from accessing the international banking network. These ministers' stated goal is the annexation of the West Bank, and they have acted in ways that violate both the spirit and the letter of the President's executive order. Frederick Douglass famously said that the best friend of a nation is he who most faithfully rebukes her for her sins, and he, her worst enemy, who seeks to excuse, palliate, or defend those sins under the specious garb of patriotism. It is out of love for the Palestinian people and a deep, abiding friendship with Israel that we must now rebuke Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir for their sins. I urge President Biden to heed the calls of over 80 members of Congress and use his executive order to issue these sanctions and to help put a stop to settler violence in the West.